Hi, welcome back to the Casper Planetarium's Astronomy Podcast. My name's Rod, and in today's episode, what we want to talk about is something that we don't usually think about when we talk about astronomy. We often talk about things that happen in the nighttime sky or the evening sky, but we often forget that things happen in the morning sky right before the sun comes up, too. So what we're going to do here is I've set our simulator for tomorrow, April 3rd, and at right about 6 in the morning. And as you can see, the sun is starting to rise over here in the east. And after we've kind of lost track of the stars, after the stars aren't visible anymore, there will still be three really bright objects in the sky. One that is very, very, very bright, and then two that are a little less bright. And if we were to look at these objects with a telescope, we would discover they're not stars, they're actually planets. So the brightest one is obviously the planet Jupiter. And if we were to select Jupiter here, and Jupiter will be the brightest object in that part of the sky. And if you were to look at Jupiter through a small pair of binoculars or small telescope, okay, let me turn my labels off here, we would actually see four bright objects nearby. And these four objects are the Galilean moons, named for Galileo Galilei, who first discovered them in the year 1610. And if you watch them over a period of time, observing them each successive day, you'll notice that they change position. And the names of those are Europa, Io, Ganymede, and Callisto. And you'll notice here, if we zoom in just a little bit, you can, if you have a small telescope, you may be able to determine some of the bands around the disk of Jupiter. Okay, but if you watch the moons, you can actually plot their position over a series of nights. Okay, well, the next one over is the planet Saturn. And Saturn is world famous naturally for its spectacular rings, and through a small telescope, this is what you might see. You could see the rings, you can see the gap, and Galileo was the first to observe the rings too. He was also the first person to observe the rings of Saturn, and his telescope wasn't quite good enough to be able to tell what they were, so he suggested maybe Saturn was a planet with rings or maybe even ears. Now, right below Saturn is a really bright object. That is Saturn's largest moon, Titan. And with a pair of binoculars or a small telescope, you might be able to catch that as well. Now, if you go down into the left of where Saturn is, we can see the planet Mars. Now, people get really excited about Mars, except through binoculars and a small telescope, because Mars is about a third the size of Earth, it doesn't look like much. It looks like a reddish-orange disk. It doesn't really look like much through a telescope. More powerful telescopes kind of tend to show some of the features. You may be able to see the polar ice caps. But it's only when we get really close to Mars that we can start to see some of the features. So this is this trio of planets. When planets are close together in the evening sky or the morning sky, we call it a planetary conjunction. Now, if we were to have backed up a few days, if we were to have observed on the 31st, we would notice that Saturn and Mars were very, very close together. If we'd have backed up a little further, we would have seen that Jupiter was closest to Mars. Okay. So as we go through over successive days, we notice that their positions relative to each other changes over time. Now, this is one that is the hardest one to see, is the planet Mercury. It's kind of a challenge because it is really tiny. It is very close to the sun, so that means it's hard to see in the glare of the sun. But with binoculars or a small telescope, you might, and sometimes with the naked eye, you might just barely be able to see a faint dot in the sky. So keep an eye out for these planetary conjunctions. Now, as we go forward, if we were to go forward to the 15th in that same part of the sky, and actually back up our time a little bit, the moon, the last quarter, well, let's see, I think, yeah, it's a last quarter moon, will be below the three planets on April 15th. Now, as we go to summer, we will start to see these constellations in the evening sky. They are near the constellations. They're just behind the constellation Sagittarius the Archer. And so, but for right now, they're all close together in the pre-dawn sky. Go out, and if the sky is clear over the next few mornings, go out and have a look. This is a great activity for kids if you want to get them out of bed really early. So, thanks for joining us today. We will see you again with another episode tomorrow.